Bum ba-dum 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 bum bum ba-dum 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 bum. Glad you could make it. Take you for a ride. How about I take you to the single side? To the single, to the single, single, to the single, to the single, single. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to another episode of Plein full of life, the talk show. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. I hope you're doing well. I hope your week's been great. If not, I hope this episode can pump you up and get you going. At least, thank God, it's Friday. So today I am so oh my gosh, excited to have this person on the show, because when I tell you, I have been searching hard for a doctor to be on this show, searching hard. And finally, my lucky stars, somebody said, yes, I will help you. And that is Dr. Dawood, who is an obstetrician gynecologist based in New York and has been working as one for the past 5 years. So this lovely lady right here is going to be answering all of our questions. And you might be wondering, what are we going to be talking about? Why do we have a doctor here? We're going to be talking about the vagina. Yes, the vagina. There's so many questions that you have and that I have about our vaginas. And there's so much that we don't know. And so I really think we need to have more discussions about this type of thing to really understand what our vagina is, what it can do, how to take care of it, all the lovely things about the vagina that we don't know about, we're about to learn. So this is a new series that I'm trying to start called the My Body series, where we're going to be talking in depth about different body parts. And this is the first one that I wanted to start off with. So hello, welcome, Dr. Dawood. Thank you so much for coming.
So much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. I have a question. How come you decided to specialize in as an OBGYN?
It was for me, there was no aha moment where I had finally decided on my specialty. I feel like throughout my years in medical school, I just experienced different things that kind of naturally led me to this decision. I love the field. I love the wide variety of different issues that we do. So we do everything from taking care of people with vulvas and vaginas when they're healthy, when they're not healthy, when they're pregnant, if they need surgery, if they're trying to get pregnant, if they're having issues with their menses or with menopause. We take care of women ages 8 to 88. And so you see a whole variety of issues. You get to be in the operating room, you get to be on labor and delivery, you get to take care of people in the office. So I feel like the variety and the excitement of the day-to-day, there's no 2 days that are the same. And the patients are pretty cool too. And so that's why I love my specialty, and that's why I continue to show up every day.
Amazing. What is your favorite part about being an OBGYN?
I would say my favorite part, I have a lot of favorite parts, but I'd say I have two kind of that are tied for the top. The first is being able to be present at a person's delivery, a life-changing moment. And so the opportunity and the privilege to be able to just kind of be like a fly on the wall, just be around just in case they need help with anything, is an honor, because that is a day that they're going to remember for the rest of their lives and has a huge impact on their family's history. So I think that that's very cool. It never gets old. I'd say also tied for first place is enjoying being able to definitively, quote unquote, cure someone, whether it's surgically or through medication, and see someone's quality of life improve so much more. And kind of being able to watch that happen before your eyes. I think that also never gets old.
Ooh, I love that. Okay, so first thing that we're going to get into is my first question for you. Is it vagina or vulva?
It's both, depending on what structure that you're talking about. So the vulva is the external structure. So anything that you can see from the outside. So the vulva is anything that's covered with like the hair and skin. So the labia minora, small lips, the labia majora, which is the larger lips or the bigger lips, the clitoris, our pubic hair, the anus, the perineum, that's all the vulva. So anytime we talk about the outside, it's the vulva. The vagina, you can't actually see without like an instrument. The vagina is what's on the inside. That's not covered in skin. That's covered in a more pinkish tissue for most people, pinkish brownish. So the vagina is inside and the vulva is the outside.
Oh, okay. You know, it's horrible, but I never even heard of the word vulva until like a couple months ago.
Live and you learn. I feel like everyone uses the two words interchangeably, but anatomically speaking, they're two very different things.
Okay, that's good. That's good. I'm learning so much already. My next question is, how many holes do we have down there and what are they for?
If you're a person with female anatomy, you have 3 holes down there. The first one is the urethra. It's the smallest one. It's the one where the urine comes out of. It's immediately underneath the clitoris, just to kind of orient you. Then you have the opening to the vagina. And then you have the opening to the rectum, which is the anus. So people with female anatomy have 3 holes.
Oh, the first time I heard about I thought when I was little, and up until recently, I thought that we only had 2 holes. I thought we had like the anus and I don't even know what it's called, the hole at the vagina. Know what it's called. And I thought there was only 2, but then I heard that there was 3. I'm like, where's the third one?
It's there. It's definitely.
Oh my goodness. Okay. That's cool. Third question. Does our pubic hair actually act as a defense from the outside world, and should we trim it?
So pubic hair plays a huge role in our overall health. As a gynecologist, I tell people it is healthy to have pubic hair there. It is normal to have pubic hair there. Pubic hair does play a role in the natural defense, because if there is any kind of bacteria or, like discharge from the rectum or anus, a lot of times the pubic hair will catch that rather than exposing the vagina or the urethra urine comes out of to that. So pubic hair does play a large role. If people choose not to have pubic hair, that's totally fine, if that's what they prefer themselves. But if they do choose to remove it, I recommend that they use a buzzer, kind of like those electric clippers, rather than using like a regular razor or using waxing, because injure the skin of the vulva, create these tiny little micro tears in the vulva, which can lead to infections in that area. Feel like that's what they want to do with their body, that's totally fine, but I'd recommend putting down the razor.
Okay. Okay. Are douches, vaginal wipes, and other vaginal cleaning products necessary to keep our vaginas clean?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The vagina is what a lot of people call a self-cleaning oven. The vagina, you do not ever need to clean a vagina. Remember, the vagina is what's on the inside, right? So people a lot of times get it a little bit twisted when they think, well, what am I supposed to do when I get sweaty, or, when I've had a long day? The sweat, that bacteria, that's all on the vulva. That's the outside. Whereas the vagina, a lot of times is implicated as the culprit of people having smells that they don't like. But it's usually not the vagina. It's usually the bacteria and the sweat and debris that kind of accumulates between our vulva and our undergarments. So when it comes to the vagina, the muscular tube that's on the inside, you never need the vagina. Do not ever douche. There's a reason why we use the word douche to describe people that we don't like. Douching is never good for the vagina. It can throw off pH balance of the vagina. It can change the normal healthy bacterial balance of the vagina. And it actually increases your risk of something called pelvic inflammatory disease. So no situation where a gynecologist should ever be recommending douching to someone who has female anatomy. Other things like feminine wipes, feminine washes, all that stuff, that's stuff more so for the vulva, for the outside area. Also kind of unnecessary. It's marketed as like, oh yes, you should smell like lavender, or you should taste like this, or this is what you're supposed to use. It's really just expensive soap. And a lot of times put in really unnecessary detergents and fragrances, which for some people can cause irritation of the skin of the vulva or even allergic reactions. So what I tell people is, if you feel like you need to clean the outside of the vulva, like let's say you just worked out, or, you know, it's a hot day, then just use water. And if you feel like water is not enough, then use a little bit of mild, unscented bar soap. Like I like to talk to people about Dove. If you feel like you must use something, but Oh My V and Vagisil and Refresh and all of that stuff, Honey Pot, it just markets telling people with female anatomy, this is what you need. You're not clean unless you use this. I'm going to help you smell like eucalyptus down there, which is absolutely just awful.
Oh my mind is blown. Okay, so because for me personally, I've had, which is one of my questions, I've had such an issue most of my life with like a very strong aroma from my, would it be correct to say vagina or vulva?
Most of the time, the vulva is the culprit behind smells, kind of just from bacteria and sweat accumulating there, friction. Every once in a while, if there is an infection in the vagina, you can have discharge that smells bad. But in that situation, that's an infection and you need to see a doctor. Whereas keeping up with hygiene on the vulva is just water and maybe a little bit of soap. And for a lot of people, they'll find that that's what takes care of the odor that naturally accumulates throughout the day.
I've tried using douches, wipes, scented wipes. I have tried so many different things. And even though I knew at the time when I was using douches that they can possibly change your pH balance, I was just too embarrassed by the scent that I was smelling that I was like, I don't even care if my pH balance is off. I just want to get rid of the scent. And it doesn't matter. I made sure I showered every day and I would use those douches every day. And it doesn't matter how long I use it for, the smell would not go away. So basically it's like those things don't even do anything, I guess.
They don't do anything good for you. All they can do is potentially cause trouble.
Okay. So you're saying just use water, or if really need be, unscented bar soap.
Correct. Unscented, undyed, like really less is more when it comes to taking care of your vulva. And feel like you really, really need to use something, any kind of mild, unscented, undyed soap is what's the most gentle on the vulvar skin, less likely to cause irritation, allergic reactions, if you feel like you do need something. But in general, most people just need water. And also to remember that the vagina is an organ. It's supposed to smell like an organ. It's not supposed to smell like pineapples and roses and flowers. It's not supposed to smell like the skin on the back of your hands. It's supposed to be the vagina. It is where human beings come from. It's where people have intercourse, a lot of them. It is not like any other part of the body. And so it's supposed to have a little bit of an odor. But if the person who owns the anatomy thinks that it smells a little bit too strong, then I would tell them, hey, it's probably the bacteria that's just naturally accumulating on the outside skin of the vulva. And you can maybe use a mild soap if you'd like.
Okay. So then that leads into my next question. Does a fishy scent mean you're not taking care of your vulva properly, or?
So a fishy scent is usually a sign of an infection. And the only way to know for sure if you have an infection is if you are examined by your doctor. But a smell that smells like fish is not normal. And it's usually not related to your personal habits, your personal hygiene. But it can be a sign of trichomoniasis or BV or any kind of other vaginitis, that's an infection and that requires treatment. It's not something that you did, and it's not from not being a hygienic person.
Oh, because there's always this joke, this stigma or stereotype, whatever you want to call it, that people use, especially guys, that like, if it smells down there, that means that you're not cleaning down there, you're not taking care of it. But I guess that's false. That's a lie.
There's a lot of lies out there about female anatomy, and I feel like it's been perpetuated for so long that people start to believe that that's what the actual deal is. And so part of the reason why I'm on social media is to dispel a lot of these myths that are perpetuated also sometimes by women, to be honest. So I think that that's one of the other kind of responsibilities that I have as a physician.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Okay. I'm learning so much. I'm so excited. Oh my goodness. So can you talk more about vaginitis and the other things you mentioned? You mentioned a lot of large words that I cannot pronounce. Can you talk more about those, please?
Sure. So the word itis, if you see the word itis at the end of a word, the suffix itis means inflammation. So cellulitis is inflammation of the skin. Vaginitis is inflammation of the vagina. And there's a lot of things that can cause inflammation within the vagina. Sometimes a yeast infection, bacterial vaginosis, trichomoniasis, sometimes sexually transmitted infections like gonorrhea or chlamydia can cause inflammation of the vagina. Lots of things can cause inflammation. And typically what the person will experience is either a discomfort on the inside of the vagina. Some people describe it as like a raw feeling or a burning feeling. Sometimes it's accompanied by discharge. So is it thick and white like cottage cheese? Is it mucousy and green? Is it thin and gray? Changes from a person's normal natural discharge that they're supposed to have every single day. Mm-hmm. And so that can be a sign of an infection. So when we say vaginitis, it just means inflammation of the vagina. And then as the doctor, we try to figure out, okay, well, what exactly is causing the inflammation of the vagina? How do we test for it? And more importantly, how do we get the person feeling better? How do we treat it?
Mm-hmm. Okay, interesting. And there's so much I don't even know about discharge. Like, I didn't know. I just noticed as I was growing up that there was like marks or stains on my underwear. And I was like, am I peeing myself without like realizing it? Like, I don't understand. I didn't know up until just maybe a couple years ago that it's called discharge. So what does healthy discharge look like? And what does unhealthy discharge look like?
Great question. So healthy discharge will change its appearance throughout your cycle. Typically around the middle of your cycle, so right kind of smack in between periods, your discharge is more likely to be thinner, more watery. Whereas closer to the end of your cycle, like where your period's about to start, and a little bit afterwards, it's usually a little bit thicker. And our discharge, our normal healthy discharge, is hormone responsive. And so the reason why your discharge gets so thin and watery in the middle of your cycle is so that sperm can swim through it easier, because that's your fertile time. Whereas when it's a little bit thicker, it's like, hey, it's not my fertile time. Let's keep my mucus nice and thick so that I can decrease the chances of an infection kind of crawling up there. So your cervix and your vagina both make discharge, and it should show up in your underwear. It is normal for you to have kind of like a clear whitish, maybe a slightly yellow tinge. It kind of it reminds a lot of people of like egg whites, kind of discharge. It can bleach your underwear. All of that is very normal. Discharge that is not normal is kind of like the things that I was mentioning before. If it's thick, white, and clumpy, then kind of looks like cottage cheese. If it's green, if it smells really bad, if it smells like fish, if it smells like bread.
Bread?
Yeah, that's a sign of a yeast infection.
Wow. I did not know that.
So what I always tell people is no one knows your body better than you. And so notice that something is off with your discharge, from what you're typically used to seeing every single day, day in, day out, then that would be a good reason to talk to your doctor about it. And it might be an infection or it might not be, but the only way to know for sure is for you to be examined by a professional.
Okay. Thank you. I have been educated. Okay. My next question is, why do some male doctors have a hard time taking women's health concerns seriously? And I know that there are some female doctors who also have a hard time with this, but I find more so this issue with male doctors, unfortunately.
I mean, throughout my career, I've unfortunately seen women's concerns dismissed by both genders. I think that there's probably a little bit more empathy from people who share the same anatomy as you. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I've also worked with male OBGYNs who are absolutely phenomenal, who I would let take care of me or anyone in my family. I think it's less so related necessarily to someone's gender, but rather kind of the internal biases that that person may have. I'm very open about this. Gynecology has a very dark history and not a great reputation of believing women and respecting women's dignity and autonomy. And so our whole specialty was based off of experimentation on enslaved women and poor women and immigrant women. And so our specialty has rightfully so earned a bad reputation amongst people. And people like myself and a lot of other really great doctors are on social media are doing our best to kind of take back the narrative. But there's still that historical underpinning of paternalism and trying to tell patients what's actually happening and, oh, it's all in your head, or, you know, that kind of dismissive nature. It's more so based on history than gender or anything else. And so my advice to people who feel like they're not being believed or their pain is not being taken seriously is, if you can, if you have the resources, go see another doctor, because everyone deserves, especially when it comes to gynecology, a doctor that they trust who takes their issues seriously.
I have an experience, unfortunately. This was the first time this happened to me, where I went to see a doctor. It was a male doctor, and in Toronto, and I was having trouble breathing. And I was like, do I have asthma? What's going on? And so I went into the doctor. They referred me to a breathing specialist. I don't remember what they're called. And I got some tests done, and they were like, oh, the test went back to the original doctor who referred me. And he said to me, oh, everything is fine, blah, 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 blah. Everything's fine. You don't need an inhaler. You don't have asthma. And so I asked to see the results myself and to speak to the doctor that tested me, the one that specializes in breathing. And when I called back the doctor that took the test for me, or of me, he was like, oh yeah, you have asthma. Yeah, your lungs breathing capacity is very low. It's not normal. You for sure need an inhaler. This is going to take a few months or so to like get back to normal. And the doctor that I originally saw was like, no, you're fine. You don't have asthma, anything like that. Like, I was so shocked that happened.
I'm happy that you kind of took ownership of what was going on, and you were like, you know what, something doesn't feel right. Go back to the specialist that I had seen in the first place. So you were smart enough to do that, and that's awesome. And I hope to kind of get the message out to people that if you think that something's not right, you're probably right. Yeah. And you're never wrong in seeking a second opinion. And that other doctor may have the same opinion as your previous doctor, which might kind of instill a little bit of confidence in you in the diagnosis, but it's never wrong. And like me as a physician, I'm never offended if any of my patients go for a second opinion. Like, that's fine. It's their health and they're trying to take ownership of it.
That's amazing. I hope to find more doctors like you out there.
There's a lot of us, just not all of us are like on TikTok, basically.
Yes. That's true. That's true. I'm glad you're on social media making a difference. My next question is, do vaginas and clitorises, is that like the plural or is it like clitori or?
Clitorises, but I'm also guessing.
Okay. So do vaginas and clitorises come in different sizes and shapes, or would that be the vulva? I'm so confused. The vulva comes in different shapes because the vagina is on the inside. So would it be the vulva?
Everything comes in different shapes. The vagina in different shapes, the vulva, like everything is as unique as a person's hair or face or hands. There have been, I examine vaginas for a living, right? And so there are vaginas that are quite long, quite short, quite wide, quite narrow. The state of your vagina changes throughout your life as you naturally age, as you hit puberty, as you become menopausal. If you choose to have children, sometimes when you have a vaginal delivery, your vagina changes. When you become sexually active, the vagina changes a little bit. So even in one single person, their vagina is not going to remain the same their entire life. That's the inside stuff. The outside stuff generally doesn't change too much in general from throughout a person's lifetime, but comparing person to person, every single vulva is different. So there are vulvas whose labia minora, the small lips, are quite elongated, more pronounced. There are ones that are more short. Some people have only one labia minora and then don't have it on the other side. Variants of normal. Everyone's vulva looks different. And I think that with the recent, uptick in plastic surgeries of women getting vaginal rejuvenation, this and labial reductions, that I think that they're kind of after an ideal, quote unquote, that people are telling them, this is what your vulva should look like. This is how big the lips should be. And if it's not, here's a surgery, a cosmetic surgery, a surgery that does have risks to it if you want to look, quote unquote, normal. Whereas every single vulva is normal. The same thing with the clitoris, the clitoral body that you can actually see, because the clitoris is partially on the inside, partially on the outside. Same thing. Some people have more larger, more pronounced clitorises. Some people have more small clitoris. The size of the clitoral hood, which is the skin that overlies the clitoris and protects it, is also different from person to person. So there's no one kind of normal. And throughout a person's life, what is normal for them can change as well.
Wow. So we should not be comparing our vulva, vagina, clitoris to anybody else.
Nope,
they're
never.
all normal. Amen. I love to hear that. Okay. What's next? Oh, you brought something up that I wanted to ask about. What are the risks of these types of surgeries that people are getting to try and get like the perfect vagina, vulva, clitoris? What are the risks of some of them?
What people call get a designer vagina or a designer vulva. There's one of the biggest risks is that you can get nerve damage from these procedures. If a doctor cuts a nerve, which accidentally cutting a nerve is a risk of surgery. Doctors are human beings. We're not robots. And so you could potentially lose sensation in that area, or you can potentially develop a nerve issue called neuropathy, where you're constantly all the time feeling burning or tingling in that area. Cause chronic pain or chronic numbness for a lot of people. There are people who have clitoral hood reductions and then they lose sensation in their clitoris and they will never be able to have any sensation at all from the clitoral nerve. So that's really the biggest one. Another issue is that you may not be getting the cosmetic result that's in your head. So even if you show your surgeon a picture of the vulva that you want to have, kind of like when you go to a hairdresser and you show them a picture, it's never exactly like the picture. So you still may not be satisfied in the end. There's risks of bleeding, there's risks of infection, and there's risks of anesthesia. People die during plastic and cosmetic surgery as well. And so these are not benign procedures, and it's such an unnecessary procedure that I tell people, unless you're having it done for a medical reason, stay away from it.
Wow. Wow. I will never go for a designer pussy. That's all I'm going to say.
Journey for you.
My next question, does holding your pee actually, let me see, harm you? Can you get an infection?
So holding your pee is never good. And holding your pee will not make you get an infection, but it will increase the chance that you get it. And here's what I mean. It's normal for our urine is not sterile. Like anyone who's out there drinking their pee saying that their pee is sterile, that's absolutely not true. Everyone's pee has a tiny little bit of bacteria in it, and that's normal. And it generally doesn't cause any problems in your life. When you're staying hydrated and so you're urinating a lot, whatever bacteria is hanging out inside of your bladder just gets flushed right out. And that's normal. And that's one of the things that you can do to protect urinary tract infection. People who hold in their pee for a long time, that means that the bacteria is hanging out in their bladder for a long time. And so that bacteria has more of a chance to multiply, more of a chance to get cozy in the bladder. And that can lead to something causing a urinary tract infection because you're allowing the bacteria to hang out there more.
That makes so much sense. Okay. And let's not drink urine, people. Let's try not to drink urine.
Of all the things that you can enjoy, don't drink your pee.
Okay. I think this is the last question. Oh, no. I have two more questions for you. So queefs or vagina farts, why does that happen?
So queefing is totally normal. Anytime that something allows air to enter the vagina, normally the vagina is not full of air. It's full of nothing. It's just kind of like this contracted tube. That is muscular. However, if someone has intercourse or uses a sex toy that they can insert into their vagina or uses a menstrual cup or anything like that, it allows for air pockets to enter the vagina. And they don't go anywhere. They just kind of continue to hang out into the vagina unless you kind of move a certain way, in which case that air will be released. And so the sound and feeling of air being released against the muscular tube of the vagina, that's what causes the sound of queefs, and that's what causes the sensation of a queef, and it's normal. Air gets in the vagina sometimes. It needs to come out.
Okay, nothing to be embarrassed about. Glad to hear it.
Exactly.
My last question for you. Is it possible to be born with multiple female reproductive systems? If so, how?
Absolutely. It's not very common, but I feel like if you're a gynecologist, you see it all the time just because people come to you for these reasons. You can be born with only a vagina, but no uterus, no cervix, no fallopian tubes, no ovaries. You can be born with just ovaries. You can be born with no vagina, but you can have a uterus, or, you can have two uteruses, you can have two cervixes, you can have two vaginas. There's a bunch of different kind of combinations of these anomalies. And the way that it happens is I'd say one of the more common ways that it happens is from an issue through development. So when you're still an embryo inside of your mom's womb, the way that your organs are supposed to they start out at the outsides, and they're supposed to fuse in the middle into one uterus with two fallopian tubes, one cervix, and one vagina. But if there's ever an issue with that fusion pattern, let's say they don't fuse all the way, you can have a heart-shaped vagina, like two kind of halves that did not fully meet. You can have two completely separate uteruses. There's really an endless combination of possibilities, but really it's more issues that happened within the womb while you were an embryo inside your mom.
Wow. The first time I ever heard about a woman having like two uteruses was recently, and I was like, that isn't real. Like,
it is.
Oh my gosh. Well, those were all the questions that I had for you. I feel so intelligent now about my vagina. Thank you so much for answering all the questions and for taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on the show with me. And if our listeners want to reach out to you possibly for questions, or they just want to follow you on social media, do you mind sharing what your Instagram is, please?
Sure. So my handles on social media, so I only have a TikTok and an Instagram, is Dr. Daoud. That's DOCTOR. DAOUD, no spaces, no hyphens, anything like that. Those are my social media handles. I'm not able to answer people's personal medical questions. However, a lot of times I get suggestions, which is how I get the topics for my videos. So my most recent video, people asked, what was better for their period cramps, Motrin or Tylenol. And so I made a video on that. So I encourage people to leave comments, ask questions, and hopefully I can figure out what people want to know so that I can provide that knowledge for them.
Okay, awesome. And I hope that everybody listening, especially the ladies, feel liberated learning more about their vaginas. I know I do. And now we are not going to drink our urine, nor are we going to compare our vulvas, vaginas, clitorises, nor are we going to wash our vaginas with soap unless it is unscented, undyed. Just use some water, all right? And if it smells fishy down there, go to your doctor, please. Don't be embarrassed about that strong smell. As long as it's not fishy or bread-like or any of those other things, you're good to go. And I hope you'll tune into the next episode of Plein TV. Have a great rest of your day, week, whenever I upload this, hopefully tomorrow. And thank you once again, Dr. Daoud, for joining us. Goodbye, everyone.